I'm Michael Kenny, and I'm going to do an input as part of the CM14 project management module on the BA degree. I'm based in the Department of Adult and Community Education, a colleague of the people you've met already, Derek Barter, Fergal Kenny, and I want to add further because I've already shown you or presented to you a small short video on the project cycle, and I've kept the same board and the same content to remind you. But I want to look at the whole notion of planning a project and ask you to think of it beyond the project cycle. This is the project cycle here, so I'm going to write this over it. Use a different colour, right? This is the project cycle. But do not make the mistake of thinking that projects are just the piece that you can see. In other words, the planning, the implementation, the monitoring, the evaluation. You are on the degree. You see us come into class, teach class. You see the project manager of the degree manage the class, provide the timetables, etc. But outside of this, there is a whole host of activities that have to be put in place so that this project, the delivery of the degree, happens. There's a whole administration, there's a whole bureaucracy, there's a whole management that has multiple layers. So I want to talk about those layers in the context of community-based projects and managing community-based projects. So to start off with, I'm going to draw a distinction for you, because this is the project cycle. But in terms of looking at projects and for the purposes of your module and you discussing this module and discussing what style of management fits into it, this is only one third. So we have 1/3 here, 1/3 here, and 1/3 here. Project managements and projects are presented as cycles, but they're actually much more of a spiral, because you never have one project going on at the same time. You have multiple projects going on. Your life and my life are full of multiple projects. So this is a simplification, is a theorization of what actually happens in reality. Because each of our activities are broken down into separate projects and each of them has this cycle. But this cycle is, in a sense, like a pyramid, where we can only see above the surface 1/3 of the activity. So we can see the project cycle. Think of a community project, a residents association, a tidy towns group, a local football club, a walking group, a community action, direct community action group, Reclaim the City, some group like that, a group who are opposing something like an incinerator, a group who are working on developing something for older people in their community, all these things. This is the visible part, but it is only 1/3 of the whole project. And for you looking at project management, you need to realise that there's both a before and an after section to it. Before the project cycle and after the project cycle. And that's what I want to talk about. So before the project, all groups, all management groups should be aware of data. Data collection. Too many projects are based on people's preference. I might have an interest in something, or I might feel passionately I want to change something, but I may be on my own, but I may be concluding that everybody wants the same. I need to go and find out if there is an interest. So many people in community work at community level get very disappointed that they call meetings and nobody turns up. You often hear of this notion of having a public meeting, but who turns up? So people need to be aware of the fact that if you do want to have a project, you need to collect the data and the information, qualitatively or quantitatively. You need to know how many, for instance, older people are in the community. I'm presently working on a community-based project, and we're looking at how many older people live alone, or in situations where they are cold in the winter, because fuel poverty for older people is an important issue. But we need to look at the housing stock, we need to look at the demography, and we need to have an assessment of how many people are actually affected by this. Because in some parts of Kildare, of this region, of Leinster, of the country, there are pockets where there are significant levels of fuel poverty for older people, and there are areas where there is very little fuel poverty for older people. So we need the data. So that's one thing we need to do. The second thing we need to be conscious of is policies. We need to be conscious of policies because every project now needs to have its policies. Health and safety. Having volunteers work on a project is all fine until something goes wrong and something happens. So there needs to be a health and safety policy. There needs to be a safeguarding policy for all types of vulnerable adults and especially children. There needs to be policies around how are things going to be managed, how are things going to be reported on, etc. So there's a whole host of policies that need to be put in place. And for the topic we're going to mention next, which is governance. Governance, I'm going to write this in black just in case you can see it. Governance this is policies, and this is data collection. So we have 3 boxes now before, but governance is hugely important. How are you going to govern this project? Are you going to put in place a legal entity? Are you going to need a legal entity? And are you going to put in place? Certainly if you're going to look for funding, you will need a legal entity, either a cooperative or a limited company. You will need to have a structure of governance for that. And now directors of any legal entity carry a lot of responsibility, so people need to be aware of this. Governance requires, for instance, that there are regular meetings, that people are notified in a particular way about the meetings, they're given adequate notice of meetings, that meetings will run in a particular way, that the records are kept in a particular way, that the treasurer has a particular role, that the public relations person, PRO, has a particular role, that members have a particular procedure to raise issues and bring them forward. All these things, people say, well, we don't really need that until an issue arises, and then they're sorry they don't have them in place. So governance is a professional way to run something. So it's important that that is considered and put in place in advance of progressing with it. One of the things that is very important in terms of running projects now is staffing. Staffing and resources. Like, there is a real problem if a project is managed by a group of volunteers. If I am involved in Tiny Towns of JM and I'm used to picking litter, but that project develops and we take on staff as a project, this changes my role in terms of governance, in terms of staffing, in terms of policies. Because now it is not enough for me to be out picking litter. If I have staff, I need to manage their work in terms of picking litter. I need to be conscious of my responsibilities for managing staff. What are the expectations? So many people working in the community sector don't have good job descriptions. And there are huge issues where volunteers on community groups, community organisations, have expectations of staff because they themselves are volunteers. In other words, they work a job, they come home and they work, for instance, picking rubbish. They can't sometimes understand why the staff won't pick rubbish when they're picking rubbish early on a Sunday morning, early on a Saturday morning, late on a Wednesday evening. Where are the staff? If that's not their job, if that's not what they're contracted to do, but there are lots of situations where there is conflict because staffing is not fully understood and the management of resources is not fully understood. Because if you staff, there are resource implications, not just in paying them, but in terms of providing whatever equipment they need, be that office equipment, etc. And that leads me to another point which needs to be planned in advance of this, which is admin. Administration and making sure that, for instance, if you have a project that is a legal entity, it has to make its returns on particular dates, in particular formats, and all that. If you are keeping accounts, they need to be audited by an accountant, chartered accountant. All these requirements, these are parts of admin. If you have letters to be written, etc., etc., these cannot be left so that I am out picking rubbish and I don't have time to be doing that stuff. That stuff is very important if I'm building big projects and I need to make the shift. And many community people find that difficult. And you, if you talk to project managers in the community sector, will recognise that that is a difficulty for many of them. Moving from the volunteer to being the manager of people's, because many of us do that in our own professional work. And then doing it on our off time can be sometimes difficult because a lot of community people enjoy the fact that they don't have to do what they do in their working lives. Plus, they like to be out meeting the people, in a sense. And if you are involved in administering particular projects, particularly projects with staff and legal entities, then that changes the person's role hugely. And I'm also talking about this because the project manager needs to understand these issues if they're going to manage this volunteer committee, this oversight committee. I personally sit on 4 boards as a volunteer. But the staff need to understand where I'm coming from. I don't have the same time they have to read the documents in advance. And I don't have the same time to turn up for meetings during working hours that they have. So there needs to be a compromise, but that needs to be worked out well in advance so that these things can happen. So on policies, governance, staffing and administration, I'm putting those together. And the last thing I want to add in here is the whole notion of networks. If I want to develop a project, let's say a community-based project that services the needs of older people living on their own, I need to develop networks with other projects who are doing similar type of work, so I learn from them. In other words, that the project becomes a learning project, that we're not making the same mistakes people made previously, that we learn from the best examples, that we take the time and put in the effort to go and visit other projects doing similar type of work and learn from them. That means developing networks, finding out who's doing similar projects. So if I'm doing that, I'm going to talk to the ageing organisations for older people, the organisations that are already doing similar type of work. I want to link with them, I want to find out, and that's where it's good to take out membership of organisations like that and get in links and contacts for other groups who are doing similar work, going and talking to them, learning from them, etc. Tiny towns, same, meeting other tiny towns groups, seeing what they're doing, seeing how they're organising their biodiversity, or their learning, education, or their streetscapes, or their parkscapes, and all those. How are they interacting with their local authorities, and all those things. They are also points of. So they are all about developing networks. So this is a third of the work before the project actually happens. And I'm suggesting to you that it is very important that this is done, often not talked about, certainly not talked about enough. And so many people walk into projects doing this, like a baby that runs before it can walk, and then falls over, crashes, scrapes their face, whatever. So it's important that a group who are planning to manage a project are conscious and have spent the time here. And if they are not willing to spend the time doing this, then it is questionable whether they have the competence to do this. If they don't spend the time doing this, then it is questionable whether they will be able to do this competently on a sustainable basis. So now we look at the first third. We've already previously talked about the second third, the middle third, the project cycle third. Now I want to go and spend a little time on the final third, the output side of it. Because we can call this input. So before we do the project cycle, these are the inputs, the data, the policies, the governance, the staffing, the admin, and the networks. The outputs are over this side. And I want to summarise these down. Many of them will overlap with the inputs. And this is why it is another third and needs to be tended to as well. So, everybody is involved in the project because they want to see something done. If I'm involved with a youth project, I want to see something done with and for young people. If I'm involved in a project with older people, I want to see something done with and for older people. If I'm involved in a project around objecting to a dump, I want to see something come out of that. I want to see some success. If I'm involved in Tidy Towns as I am, I want to see progress in terms of us as a group progressing on the Tidy Towns ranking, but I also want to see it in terms of pictures in the town and the area. I want to hear people compliment or talk about or note the things that the Tidy Towns group have done. And ultimately, I want the group to be a happy group, to feel that it's good to work together and that we're achieving something. So, the first word that I put here is achievements. I want to see achievements. So that is the one of the outputs I'm looking for, is achievements. So having done all of this, a group needs to have a sense of achievement. That there are markers along the way, and you'll be looking at that in more detail when you consider planning, short-term planning, medium-term planning, and longer-term planning. The other thing I'm expecting that at the end of it, I will have a greater range of networks. Here, we talked about going to visit Tidy Towns groups, or groups working with other people. Here, we are now one of the groups who are doing this. So, I'm expecting that other groups will be coming to talk to us. Plus, we will be continuing to talk to some of the groups that we already have found very interesting. So we develop relationships with those groups. Maybe it's true sometime in an organisation like the Meals on Wheels organisations, or the Irish Rural Link, of which I'm a member, organisations for rural development projects, or I'm involved in international projects, so I'm involved in Concern Worldwide, the International Development Agency, and all those. So through all those, I make links with other types of groups, so I build my networks. That's something I achieve. I also put in here governance. Because my involvement here, getting ready to be managing projects, progresses on to being more competent in that governance capacity, learning, attending seminars, getting more information. We're now very conscious of the data protection issues, we're very conscious of safeguarding, we're very conscious of record keeping, we're very conscious of how we keep those records very good. All those issues are governance records, managing meetings, holding meetings. What a secretary does, what a treasurer does, all those. So they build up over time, so I'm expecting my governance competence to improve over time as well. So I want to see governance and more people in the organisation take governance roles and get confident in those governance roles, and they basically grow. Personal development, they grow as people. So that's another output that I want to see. I will also link it into the data collection. But I now put it in as data generation. If I'm involved in a project, and if we're implementing that project well, we will be keeping good records. So now this project is actually generating data. Now that is a responsibility, because what do we do with that data? How do we hold it? How do we protect it? How do we make it available? But the point is that we now have data to make available to others who are developing projects, to all others who are looking at the whole issue of addressing the needs of, let's say, people with addictions, or young people who have dropped out of school, whatever. We now have data and how that information. So, along talking about collecting data earlier on, we're now talking about generation of data and feeding in more data into that and collecting that data. So, and the last thing is that on an ongoing basis we will have a cycle for reviewing our policies. In the various management groups, boards that I am on, we will have a cycle of reviewing policies. Tough going stuff, because it's not the most exciting stuff to be at, but we're constantly looking at the range of policies that we have in place and updating them on a regular basis, because it doesn't stand still. And we can't end up in 5 years' time finding that our policies are way out of date. So we need to be reviewing them. So the cycle of policy development goes on within the organisation. And indeed, there may be people on this management group, this board, who have responsibility for actually following up and keeping an eye on policy. It may be the place where we bring in people who are co-opted specialists. So for instance, we may have somebody with a legal background who comes in as a co-optee to help us with the development of our legal policies. Health and safety, safeguarding, all those policies that have to be. We may have particular policies related to youth, particular policies related to older people, etc. So that is. So now we're looking at the the final third. The project has achievements. The project is constantly developing further measures. The project is enhancing its governance and adjusting its governance needs as the project develops. The project is now generating data and information and archiving that information, and also the project is developing its policies. So what I sought to do here is say to you, by having introduced the project cycle, that project management for community-based projects is about much more. The project cycle is one third. There is a third about inputs, data collection, policies, governance, staffing, admin, networks. There's a third which is about outputs, achievements, networks, governance, data generation and policy development. So overall, here you see the project management in a wider phase. You see it not just as what actually happens, you see it as what I'm pointing out, what should happen before and what should happen afterwards to have a sustainable, long-term project. And therefore, you can say that out of it will come highly competent project management. I hope you found this useful. I hope this feeds into the various materials and literature that you're reading and other content that you find online and from the people you're interviewing. It would be useful, particularly when you're interviewing people, that you interview them not just about what they're doing, but the input side of it, and each of these points, and the output side of it, each of these points. Because often, particularly in the likes of the ZAES or club management, the focus is on this here. The club manager gives very little time to this, very little time, holds it all to him or herself, doesn't allow other people in. The Dionysus often doesn't give much time to these as well, the Dionysus manager, because they don't like the time spent on those. So just be conscious of where this fits into the different management styles and finding the style that attends to these three elements of project management. I hope you found this useful. Thank you.